Steve Stoute is the founder and CEO of UnitedMasters and Translation LLC. He's a music industry pioneer and advertising entrepreneur who has produced albums for Mariah Carey and Nas and led production for Gwen Stefani and Enrique Iglesias. With funding from Alphabet, Apple, Andreessen Horowitz, and Disney, Stoute's companies operate at the intersection of technology, culture, innovation, and storytelling. Steve, thanks so much for joining us. You've been in the business back when they were trying to legislate hip hop. And back then,
if you trying to legislate it now as well.
Still, yes.
Yeah.
And if you didn't have a contract, you just couldn't break into the business. Prince talked about being independent. It didn't take on. Now we have artists talking about being independent.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, I think when Prince said it, nobody really understood what he meant. He was way ahead of his time. He's a visionary. He's a visionary musically, and he was a visionary on understanding the music business. And in fact, he changed his name to the artist formerly known as Prince to get out of his contract. And I think just in general, people thought it's Prince, it's eccentric, not that it was actually a fundamental business reason why. And over time, people really started to understand the value of ownership. They can own your name, they own your likeness. It's in the recording contracts. That's the fundamental understanding of a recording contract, is that they own you. And as music has gone digital distribution, and TikTok and Instagram has become the new MTV, and Apple Music and Spotify has become the new record store per se, and radio, the value of a record company is absolutely diminished. And that's where UnitedMasters come in, because we connect the artist and the creator directly to the distribution platforms.
Now, I went to CultureCon, and Lena Waithe talked about the correlation between show business and the music industry. And in it, I was asking about generational wealth.
Yeah.
And she talked about, she's like, you realize that even now, she's like, we give away our intellectual property.
Yeah.
But she said, we don't even get money from residuals from streaming.
No.
So this whole same thing where you have a lot of people who are talking about going independent, and particularly now with the pandemic, we had so many, what they call a gig economy, people going independent. How do you see this coming up? Like particularly with corporate, you talk about the studio industry, we're talking about corporate America.
Yeah.
This whole kind of like move, and they're talking about the Great Resignation towards, no, I need to become the master of my own fate.
Yeah, well, so there's a couple of things that I'd like to discuss. So Lena is correct. If you don't own, you can't create generational wealth. That's the whole, you have to have an asset to pass down. You have to have an asset that keeps putting off money and putting off value or creating value in order for you to pass it to your siblings and pass it to the next generation. So if you sign a record deal and you give away those rights, I mean, you have nothing to pass down. You have this short-term financial gain of the money they gave you to purchase those rights. I think what you've seen is this sort of shift as generations have evolved, where we've gone from the indentured servant to slavery to the employee to ownership. And I think that's where we are. And just sort of the work in the cycle of value creation is like, I don't want to be an employee. I just don't want to be an employee anymore. I want to own. So even if you work at a company, you want equity. And if you're a creator, you definitely want to retain the value of the intellectual property that you created. So that's just the evolution of the way things have evolved. And that's a good thing, because those stories that we all grew up on watching, I don't know if it was the 5 Heartbeats or whatever tragic, story of a creator who created something and then looked up and ended up, they didn't own anything, and that their name and their likeness and their work was gone, are not stories that people want to replicate anymore. These next generation of creators are entrepreneurs, and that's actually exciting for me to go from being in the record business and not understanding as a record executive actually economics of the business. And I tell a lot of people who are friends of mine that work at record companies, they work there, they don't realize that what they're doing is empowering these companies to take these rights. But as I've evolved as a person, we're able to build this business to help provide these opportunities, you're seeing it opened up a lot of eyes. And that's why, out of all the things that I've done in my career, I'm really most proud of UnitedMasters, because it's not about me. It's about helping the next generation of artists own themselves.
Going to UnitedMasters. So I just remember, people growing up, if they grew up on MTV and making a band, like I said, there was this big thing about people weren't talking about ownership. It's like, I want the chain.
Yeah.
How does people had to change, but
the jacket, anything.
It's too short.
Some symbolism, some short-term symbolism. Yeah.
Nothing that you said that was an equity or asset. And I think Too Short rapped about, it doesn't matter if you have $80,000 car, but you lived in your mom's basement.
Yeah.
How is UnitedMasters helping these independent artists come into their own and own their own stuff? What does it do?
Well, the first thing that we're providing is a very simple interface so that you can distribute your music. And, when you go through us, you don't have any issues about ownership. It's yours. You retain the rights, period, right? So we're first providing that. That's just distribution. On top of that, we also provide brand services. Okay. So we have a company, Translation, that works with some of the greatest brands, the NBA, State Farm, AT&T, and many others. And between the brand side of the business and having the artists, we actually make connections. And we've created a marketplace where the brands and the artists connect. Brands want to be on the front end of understanding culture. These artists are creating culture, so there's obviously a synergy there. And we put that together at scale, whether it be sync, so you're watching a commercial or you're watching a feed on social media, the music behind that feed, we're trying to provide all that through our independent artist network. So we're providing artist distribution plus brand opportunities to underwrite a lot of the things they want to do, go on their first tour, shoot their videos, whatever they want to do. We have brands that are helping underwrite that and putting money in their pocket. So it becomes distribution plus opportunity, which no one else in the marketplace even comes close to providing those services.
So you talked about distribution plus opportunity. You started off in the record industry. Why did you make the switch into branding, advertising with Translation?
That's a long story, but it started with, oddly enough, I worked on the film Men in Black, the soundtrack Men in Black. And it was one of these things where the glasses sold 14 million, and the album sold 10. And the glasses not only sold more, but we were a big reason why the glasses were selling, but we got no credit for it at the record company. And I was like, I'd much rather, if we can create culture and then somebody else monetizes it, I'd much rather be on the side that monetizes it. So it wasn't a coincidence. I knew that music actually creates cultural moments that then creates consumer behavior, contagious consumer behavior, where you got it, I want to buy it, like you got that haircut, I want that haircut, that kind of thing. And I went on the advertising side. The company that did the product placement to put the glasses in the music video and all that is a company that I first went to, and I left the record business, and I wanted to learn the advertising business, and I learned it. And then in 2004, I left and I started Translation, and I've owned the company since 2004. I can't believe it's been
That's
almost, it's 18 years, 17, 18 years.
So we talked about branding. One of the things that I want to bring up is in 2020, after George Floyd, a bunch of companies, Black Square, were involved in ESG, environmental social governance. We care about social justice.
Yeah.
However, it is now 2022, and we've had more cases since George Floyd.
Yeah.
How does this whole branding, ESG?
That's it. And the DEI, diversity.
Yes.
Right. Diversity offices and stuff. It's sadly enough to say that every time something happens, you see industries. I could talk about the advertising industry for a second. They always say, oh, we got to do better. And then they just go right back to what they were doing before. And I wrote a lot about this because unless the brands say, unless you have a certain amount of people that are diverse, or this is your employment requirements, then why would I be in business with you? I hold you to a standard. Unless it affects your money, these brands, these agencies, specifically on the creative agency side, they're not going to police themselves. So then they go around and they go, and on the brand side, they go, oh, we're going to put a black square. Like, that's not going to do anything. A black square means nothing. That's not commitment. That's commitment to somebody, a social media manager, just making a square black. What are you going to do about the infrastructure on your hiring process? What are you going to do about your board? What are you going to do about your marketing campaigns, and how inclusive are they? Like, those are the infrastructure things that need to be checked. And unfortunately, what I've seen over and over again is that this stuff, when it's in the top right-hand corner of the Washington Post or the New York Times, everyone cares. Then as soon as it dissipates and something else comes up, like the war in the Ukraine, all that stuff just goes to the side. So nothing really changes. I'm doing the best that we can. At UnitedMasters, at my companies, we're hiring, we're fully diverse. Like, I'm committed to that. But I've always been committed to that. Like, it's not a new thing. The commitment is real. And there are some brands that I will say that has done a really good job and have reached out and said, I want to do better. I'm trying my best to do better. Show me the way. And I'm proud of those partners. Google is one of those partners. Apple is one of those partners. There's some brands like the NBA that is absolutely, Adam Silver believes that is core in diversity. So there's some, but then there's others that honestly, they visit the subject right when the sun is shining on them. And then as soon as it goes away, then they go back to business as normal. Yeah, normal, usual, that kind of thing. And it's sad because you really do want your board and your marketing to reflect society. You become actually a much better business when you have diverse thoughts at the table. You become.
Thank you.
I mean, you're much better company. It
makes it better to have
It makes it better. Like you have, but like it's almost like the nepotism is so strong that you choose nepotism over outcome.
Thank you so much, Steve, for shining a light and coming to AMS and sharing these words with us. Hopefully our independent artists who are watching are listening and learning, and also those creators out there who want to become their own employer.
That's right. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Such a pleasure. And I love the fact that you asked me those questions because I can't not talk enough about helping our people. I can't talk enough about helping independent artists and providing them the tools and the education to own their future.
Thank you.
Thank you.